spring has been expanded, we can then push up from the bottom to remove the overdrive section from the housing. Okay, now that this unit has been removed from the housing, we are now prepared to start disassembling this overdrive section. Now this has an 800-pound spring in it, so care needs to be taken when removing the retaining snap ring that holds this sliding hub in place, because this 800-pound spring can hurt someone if they're not careful. So we're going to place this unit in a press to compress the spring, remove the retaining ring, and then we can start pulling the overdrive direct clutches and sliding hub and the 800-pound spring out of the direct clutch drum. We now have the overdrive assembly installed into the press, and we are prepared to compress the 800-pound spring and remove the retaining snap ring that holds it into place. Before you release the tension from the 800-pound spring, you will also have to remove the snap ring that holds the direct clutches, the overdrive direct clutches, into the drum. We are now ready to release the 800-pound spring. Sounds like Halloween. Now that we have the 800-pound released, we could remove the sliding hub and the overdrive direct clutches, the 800-pound spring. We can remove the sun gear and bearing. We can remove the planetary. And we can reach down and remove the inner race and one-way clutch. And now we can remove the direct clutch drum, the overdrive direct clutch drum, from the output shaft. But before you do that, you should put marks on your direct clutch drum to the analyst gear so that during reassembly you can index the parts to prevent any possibility of a vibration concern after assembly. So we will index our part on a direct clutch drum and on the analyst gear. And now we can remove the snap ring on the inside of the direct clutch drum. Once this inside snap ring has been removed, we can then slide the overdrive direct clutch drum back so we can gain access to the snap ring that's behind the drum. And with this snap ring removed, we can now remove the direct clutch drum from the assembly. Now, before we can remove the output shaft from the analyst gear, we have to place marks on the output shaft and the analyst gear for the same reasons as to be able to index the output shaft to the analyst gear to prevent any possibility of vibration. So we will make our marks. And now we can remove the snap ring. Now that the snap ring has been removed, we can now lift the output shaft up off of the analyst gear. Okay, now we're ready to get into the overdrive section and many changes that have taken place, interchangeability, things that you need to be aware of. There has been a lot of misassembly that has caused a no overdrive condition or a bind up on a 3/4 shift, all due to not understanding some of the part changes that has taken place. But first I'd like to address the governor. The governor, as you can see here, is similar to the ones that you would see in a Torque Flight 6 or Torque Flight 8. No secrets here, very familiar. You would have to remove this snap ring from the back and obviously remove the E-clip and pull the stem wire out of the governor so that you can remove the assembly from the output shaft. Now this is a check that you'll want to make because the primary weight pounds up against the output shaft, and this causes the primary weight to mushroom, and this could give us a no upshift condition. So this will have to be inspected. Also, you'll have to inspect the bushings on the inside here for any wear or damage, just like you would with any other type transmission. But now we're going to get into how to identify the different overdrive direct clutch drum, because there are 3 different drums, and if you're not aware of these 3 different drums, you could have the wrong amount of frictions installed into this drum, and now we have an assembly problem that can give us a no 3/4 shift, a bind up on a 3/4 shift, or a no reverse. So let's take a look at how we can tell the 3 different drums and how many frictions belong in these drums. When we were removing the 800-pound spring, before we released the tension from the spring, we had to remove a snap ring from the top of the direct clutch drum, as we did here on this pack. Now this snap ring fit in this groove right here at the top of the drum. Now it's the distance that's between this snap ring groove and the top of the drum that determines how many frictions are supposed to be in this drum. Here we have one style drum. Here you can see that the snap ring groove is a little lower, and here you can see that the snap ring groove is even lower. So a measurement is going to have to be taken in order to determine how many frictions and steel plates belong in each drum. So we would take a dial caliber and we would measure from the top of the snap ring groove to the top of the drum, and when we have approximately 100 thousandths, this drum will take 8 line plates and 7 steel plates. This drum will be approximately 350 thousandths, will take 6 line plates and 5 steel plates, and this drum is approximately 485 thousandths and will take 5 line plates and 4 steel plates in this drum. A mismatch here again could give you either a no reverse or a bind up on a 3/4 shift. Another problem that has come up in the overdrive section is oftentimes when you disassemble it, you will find that this planetary section has torn apart. And the reason for this is that this sun gear and shaft with the thrust plate sits down on this 800-pound spring, and obviously this 800-pound spring is compressed, and this planetary sits on top of this sun gear with a Torrington bearing in between the thrust plate and the planetary. And what happens is there is so much pressure squeezing on the thrust plate and the planetary that lube oil has a very difficult time getting in between to lubricate the Torrington bearing. And this is the style planetary that can give us this problem, because as you can see on the inside opening of the planetary, or the mouth, we have a 90-degree angle cut. With this bearing sitting in here, the oil has a real difficult time getting between here and into the bearing to keep it lubricated. So if you have this style planetary and it is not damaged, you would have to grind a 45-degree angle all around the opening here, about 50 thousandths wide. Now, the thrust plate and bearing has been updated, where now the thrust plate have scallop marks in them to allow lube oil to get in behind the bearing. And the bearing has also been updated. It's larger, as you can see from the original. And this will retrofit back to all previous models, and always make sure that you have that angle cut into the mouth of your planetary assembly. The part number for this thrust plate and bearing is 4740774. If your sun gear shaft was damaged due to the planetaries having a lack of lube, and you purchase a new sun gear shaft, pay close attention to the groove here for the retaining snap ring that would hold that 800-pound spring. There has been some of these coming through where they're not machined all the way down and will not retain the snap ring properly. Be sure that the groove is cut the fullest depth of the splines. If you see half the splines cut, then this new sun gear shaft cannot be used during the reassembly. Also, the one-way clutch that's in the overdrive section will need to be inspected for wear as well. The only purpose of this one-way clutch is to prevent a flare during a 3/4 shift as the overdrive direct clutches are being released and the overdrive clutches are being applied. This will momentarily hold during that application. If this fails, you will have a flare on a 3/4 shift. Another area that needs to be inspected is the governor tubes in the extension housing. You want to make sure that these governor tubes are not damaged. One is your feed to the governor, and one is the return from the governor to the valve body to shift the transmission. Also, make sure that the bore in which the governor rides in is not grooved out from the rings or damaged in any way. This assembly can be removed from the extension housing if damage has occurred and part replacement is available. We are now ready to begin to reassemble the overdrive section. So the first step would be to line up your marks that you made on the analyst gear to the output shaft, and you would assemble the analyst gear to the output shaft, and you would put in your thick snap ring. Once the snap ring is in, we can then install the overdrive direct clutch drum by finding our mark so that we can index the drum to the analyst gear. Once the drum is on, we take the one round snap ring and put it into the drum. And now we're able to install the inside round snap ring into the drum. We are now ready to install the one-way clutch and the planetary and the overdrive direct clutch frictions. The best way to install this one-way clutch is to have the one-way clutch onto the inner race and securing the bearing to the inner race with transgel. And you can place this assembly into the housing, rotating the inner race counterclockwise, and it will fall right into place. Next, we can put in the planetary assembly. Now, before we assemble the direct clutch drum, I want to show you another problem that can occur if we're not aware of the proper assembly. This bottom plate